We were on patrol, and we were driving down this road, and the insurgents had rolled a bomb, an aircraft bomb, into a hole that they had already detonated something in, and they repaired the road. So we rolled over this bomb, and it was a 500-pound aircraft bomb that went off under approximately the front left tire of the Humvee I was in. It was up armored and everything, but the explosion was so large it lifted the Humvee about 30 foot in the air. So anyways, we ended up spun around, looking back at the blast hole about 30 yards down the road, off the side of the road, up against a palm tree, with ammunition from my 50 caliber machine gun up in the tree. It was, my driver was, he was killed pretty much instantly by the blast. It was so large it just...
The blast happened, and they immediately knocked him out so that to keep him safe and not from hurting himself. The one thing one of his guys, his wingman, told me, Sir Maldonado, was that they could hear Karl yelling and using expletives that we won't put on video. And so they were like, oh my gosh, thank God he's alive, at least we know he's alive. And he was yelling basically to get him out of the Humvee. From that point, he was in a medically induced coma. He went to the cache there in Baghdad, and he stayed for 4 days in this coma because they could not stabilize him between his heart rate and his blood pressure, mainly due to the fact he had a bruised heart, which we didn't know for quite some time. He stayed 4 days in Baghdad, and of course Joy didn't get a call from her husband because he's in a coma. For 8 days, I was at home, and I waited and I waited, and finally when he got to Germany, though, I could call Department of Defense, and then they would patch me through to Landstuhl, where I could actually talk to a surgeon, to a doctor, to find out what was going on.
I remember waking up in D.C. looking at her. It was, what, 2 weeks later? A week and a half later?
Almost 2 weeks.
Going, what happened? Because I didn't remember anything. I didn't remember the journey. I didn't remember the hospital in Baghdad. I didn't remember getting to Walter Reed. I
had to tell him that his driver was killed. He did not. Of course, he had no memory. And the nurses at the hospital, of course, they knew, but it was not their place. And I had talked to one of the nurses, and I asked her if he knew, and she said, no, he's asking. And I had asked her not to tell him. I did not want that to come. So I told him it was very difficult. It was hard on him. And then, of course, because of all the medication and the drugs he was on, and because of the TBI, and the significant, you know, the blast being so large, the next morning when I got there, he did not remember. And I had to tell him again.